So here's the question. How do you shake people out of a death cult? Now, if you were talking to King George III in 1778, he would say, you know, those Americans are a death cult. We send our businesses over there. They destroyed our tea. They blow up our stores and our ships. We send our soldiers over there. They shoot at them. They won't even stand in formation in line like military is supposed to. They hide behind trees. They're terrorists. It's a death cult. Think about it for a minute. Yes, George III, King George III, used the word terrorist to describe George Washington and our soldiers. So what was it that animated the American death cult, to use King George III's, well, he didn't use that phrase, but you get my point. It was occupation. We were occupied by a foreign country. Now, for a long time, we thought we were that country. Prior to, in 1772, Thomas Jefferson published a tract called a something view of the rights of British Americans. And it was basically how to be a good British subject while living in North America. Thomas Jefferson. 1 year later, the Tea Act happens. World's largest tax cut for the British East India Company. The vandalism happens where they destroyed the tea in Boston Harbor, and Thomas Jefferson and everybody else were, okay, that's it. We're off to the races. We are going to fight back. With what had been a benevolent occupation has become a malevolent occupation. What had been us occupying us has become them occupying us. And we shared religion, cultural history, social history, lineage. I mean, virtually all the white people anyway in North America could track, they knew where their families came from in Europe. And yet still we said, no, we don't want to be occupied. So number one, stop the occupation. People say, oh, but all hell will break loose. Yeah, when we stopped occupying Vietnam, all hell broke loose for a while. And then they sorted it out. People say, well, you stopped occupying Cambodia and Pol Pot killed 2 million people. Well, we never occupied Cambodia. We just bombed them illegally, secretly. Richard Nixon. But again, it's a great example. You break a country, you have some responsibility for what happened. And we took no responsibility after Vietnam for what happened in Cambodia. And 2 million people died. So how do you break the back of a death cult? Number one, you take away their rationale for being, their excuse for their existence. The excuse for the existence, well, when the Soviet Union was occupying Afghanistan, the death cult, the freedom fighters was what Ronald Reagan called them. He invited them to the White House. This was the Mujahideen, today known as Al-Qaeda. It was Osama bin Laden and his buddies. Ronald Reagan loved them. He sent them all kinds of money. Fight those Soviets. They're occupying your country. We're on your side. We're against the occupiers. And they were like, cool, we'll take your money. We'll take your weapons. They threw out the Soviets. And some semblance of rationality. Now, obviously I don't think that the Taliban is the most, well, actually they're very rational. I don't think that they're all that humane. But some semblance of, kind of peace and stability at least came to the country. It wasn't a country that you or I would want to live in. But the Soviets just got the hell out. And then George W. Bush comes along in 2002, and we get the hell back in. So number one, stop the occupation of these various countries. John Kerry a couple of days ago spoke about President Assad of Syria and stopped calling for him to leave Syria. He said, we'll work with Assad. I mean, essentially, we're changing our foreign policy. We're saying, Assad, brutal dictator, but that's fine. We're concerned about this death cult. Well, let Assad deal with the death cult in his own country. Let the Syrians say, hey, I'm a Syrian, or I'm not. Why is it our fight? Now, you could build a case with Iraq and Afghanistan that it's our fight to the extent that we broke their countries And this is how we broke the death cults after World War II in Japan and Germany. We didn't go in and exploit their countries the way that L. Paul Bremer and Wolfowitz did, and who was our defense secretary? Rumsfeld. Why am I constantly mixing up Rumsfeld and Wolfowitz? Anyhow, Donald Rumsfeld. We didn't use Germany and Japan to enrich our American corporations. In fact, we've got a clip on one of the machines here of FDR famously saying, I do not want to see one millionaire made as a result of this war. We didn't do that. We didn't send Halliburton in. We didn't send GE in. Instead, we sent them money and we loaned them money and said, use this money to build your own factories, to build your own steel mills, your own cement factories. Did you find the clip? Yeah. Here's FDR, I think. Here we are.
Our present emergency and a common sense of decency make it imperative that no new group of war millionaires shall come into being in this nation as a result of the struggles abroad.
There you go. I mean, no war millionaires. That's the exact opposite of what George W. Bush did. And the people in Iraq and Afghanistan know it. We send our companies over there. They build crappy buildings. People get electrocuted. Our own soldiers. People die. The buildings fall apart. So just give them the money and say, here, rebuild your country. Or help them rebuild the country with local materials and local people. Don't send in American contractors. That takes away the rationale for the death cult's existence. There's no longer an occupation. And we're helping you put your country back together. And we will provide a good example of being good neighbors. And then as the death cult continues, because there were, hangers-on, there were Nazi hangers-on after World War II in Europe. There were Hirohito lovers in Japan after World War II. Then you let the local country deal with their own local death cult. It's real simple. We've been through this before.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-536-2370.
But if we go down this road that the president is asking for, of boots on the ground in these countries, let's occupy 2 more countries, it's just going to expand and extend this.